Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. We have a lot of big events to talk about today and a long episode, so settle in. Quick shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Peter Park, Shay Meehan, and Nathan Stankowski, as well as all our other patrons. You keep us all informed and engaged. If any of you out there want to join these advocates of humanity first and independent journalism, head on over to patreon.com/yangdaily. It would only take a couple of bucks a month from each listener to keep this podcast and community going and growing into the future. Now on to the news. I won't bury the lead. What most of us have been dreading has finally arrived. Yang has contracted COVID. It was only a matter of time when interacting with so many people each day. He says that he got a positive rapid test, that he's experiencing mild symptoms, is in quarantine, and that Evelyn has him very well contained and cared for. On the bright side, he can now serve as a good role model and provide insight into how to properly manage being infected for a wide audience. I don't know that we've had very many big figures documenting it, as far as I've seen. To that end, he has already released a video with Dr. Dara Cass going over exactly what to do. In short, it's isolate yourself in a room of the house immediately if you feel unusually tired or sick until you can get tested so that you don't pass it on to others, which includes not sharing meals. Most people feel tired a couple of days before they confirm that they have it, and that's usually when they end up giving it to family, friends, and coworkers. Don't be that person. If you have any reason to think you might have it, assume that you do. Once you know you have it, both you and anyone you interacted with need to stay quarantined for 10 days unless they get a PCR test showing that they're negative. Drink lots of liquids, get lots of rest, and ride it out. Might also try upping your zinc intake by a safe amount. I don't know for sure that it helps, but some doctors swear that it's vital. Check out the video in the links for more on Yang and his new life in his kid's bedroom. A while back, Sauger from The Hills Rising did a segment excoriating Biden for being too soft on the relief bill, speculating that he will allow the bill to be pared back in an attempt at bipartisanship. He urged Biden to take FDR's approach of using his mandate and high approval from the people to pressure Congress into line and force it through immediately. He also pointed out that the reconciliation process can take a very long time, weeks to months, due to the convoluted nature of it and how many steps are involved, especially with impeachment interrupting. Sauger insisted on a standalone bill for the checks, and that the people care more about results, not reaching across the aisle. I'm sure you know by now that I agree with him on both points. In fact, according to a new YouGov poll, support for $2,000 checks is up to 74%, with only 13% opposed, including support from 57% of Republicans, making it clearly bipartisan. Yet the majority of Republicans in Congress oppose it. And this gets to the larger problem. Republican politicians are not representing the will of their own constituents, much less the entire population. Yet they keep getting reelected. This is a warning sign that our democratic system needs serious reforms. And that extends to our media as the GOP continue to convince people to vote not for them, but against Democrats via lies and fear-mongering, which has increased to monstrous proportion with the embrace of Trump, who issued tens of thousands of lies in his 4 years alone. Most damaging were the COVID and democracy lies, which turned the GOP into a pro-death, anti-democracy cult. And the GOP propaganda machine is now running full tilt in opposition to the very democratic reforms needed to make them serve the people, such as H.R. 1. The YouGov poll has more to tell us. When asked about 20 policies that define Biden's agenda, all 20 showed a plurality of support, meaning more support it than oppose it. The majority of them have at least twice as much support as opposition, and nearly half are favored by more than 60% of Americans. I'll quickly rattle off the support-opposed numbers for each in descending order, as it's good to know public opinion. $2,000 checks, 74% support, 13% opposed. More vaccine funding, 69 to 17. Investing in renewable energy, 67 to 17. Funding research and development to assist domestic manufacturing, 65 to 13. Ending family separation at the border, 64 to 20. Comprehensive criminal justice reform, 63 to 12. Pathway to citizenship for children, 61 to 23, $15 minimum wage, 58 to 31, allowing consumers to purchase medication from other countries, 58 to 15, rejoining the WHO, 57 to 28, a Medicare-like public health option, 57 to 22, national mask mandate, 57 to 32, cutting emissions to zero by 2050, 54 to 23, funding for community policing, 51 to 21, reversing tax cuts for incomes over $400,000, 50 to 30, rejoining the Paris Climate Accords, 48 to 30, free college for family incomes under $125,000, 47 to 33, reversing tax cut for corporations, 45 to 32, halting construction of the border wall, 45 to 42, and ending the ban on travelers from Muslim countries, 42 to 35. That's all in the link below, of course. 75% of these policies have the support of the majority of Americans. For all the many faults of the Democratic Party, they do appear to be the party of the people at this time. What they really need is to step up and enact the people's agenda, which, due to the GOP unfortunately opposing most of these popular policies, will require doing away with the filibuster. And that brings us back to Sauger's fears. The White House has announced that they will not lower the amount of the, at this point, $1,400 checks, but they are open to narrowing eligibility, meaning more stringent means testing. The former, of course, is good, and the latter, absolutely wrong-headed. It is empirically bad policy to means test these checks on the front end at all, much less to a greater degree than before, when we know that it excludes people in need and that we could simply send it to everyone and tax back whatever is deemed unnecessary on the back end. It's infuriating that this is not even being discussed. Spokeswoman Jen Psaki added that Biden is wary of limiting the income threshold too dramatically and said Biden believes a nurse and a teacher jointly earning $120,000 a year in Scranton should get a check. This seems to imply that the cutoff would be around $60,000 at the lowest. Worth remembering that while front-end means testing is bad to begin with, it's worse here as it will be based on 2019 income. Before the pandemic ruined everyone's income. As Matt Bruenig, founder of the People's Policy Project, says, quote, "This is not targeting, it's the illusion of targeting, an illusion that will end up hurting tens of millions of people who are currently in need but were not in 2019, end quote. It seems likely that Biden is looking for any way to get Republicans to vote for the relief package without significantly changing it, in hopes to ensure that it passes, and he sees this as a way to do so. However, Republican Senator Shelley Capito said of the meeting with Biden, quote, "No promises made and no real concessions made at this time, but certainly a greater understanding of where we are," end quote. So it's unclear yet if they will ultimately lower the income threshold. But what Biden does not seem to recognize is that the targeting can eliminate many millions of people from receiving the aid that they need. Let him know your feelings on it, and better yet, the evidence's feelings on it. And while you're at it, tell him to stop screwing around and push Congress to pass the damn checks as a standalone bill before more people lose their lives and livelihoods waiting. In international news, Myanmar's military has executed a coup against their democratic government. They announced Monday that they are assuming control of all branches of government just before Parliament was poised to form a new government based on November elections, in which the National League for Democracy Party achieved a sweeping victory, including beating the military-backed party. After taking control on disturbingly familiar claims of rampant election fraud, they eventually issued formal charges against the Democratic Party leader, Suu Kyi, of illegally importing walkie-talkies. Nobel Peace Laureate Suu Kyi, President Win Myint, and other politicians and activists are being detained. The US, UN, and others have condemned the detentions, putting an end to roughly 10 years of fledgling democracy. The Tatmadaw declared a state of emergency and installed their commander-in-chief as ruler. It serves as a chilling reminder of how fragile democracy is, and that we must never take it for granted. Circling back to the Gamestop debacle, which has morphed into a class war, there's new information out on why the brokerages limited trading of the stocks involved. The CEO of one of the popular trading apps, Webull, explained the situation in an interview recently. I definitely don't feel that I understand it completely, but I'll take my best shot at distilling it down. He said that it was not really up to the brokerages to decide the trading. The brokers just send the requests for trades to clearinghouses and higher up parts of the system that actually execute the trades. It was there that decisions were made which forced brokers to restrict trading. Here's why. Essentially, the trading system did not have enough capital on hand to cover the enormous liability created by hedge funds shorting 140% of the shares of a company, followed by millions of people buying the stock to amplify those losses. Just like with the 2008 financial collapse of banks doing mortgage deals that they could not afford to cover the losses for when they inevitably blew up, leaving all of us holding the bag, the crux of this trading debacle was the same. The hedge funds could not afford to cover the losses of their insanely risky bets, which leaves other parts of the system to absorb those losses. Had the losses been more, the whole system could have collapsed, resulting in people who didn't have any part in trading those stocks getting screwed over in the process, all due to the reckless bets of those hedge funds saddling the system with debt. Hence, they had to limit the buying on the stocks in order to limit the hedge funds' losses to what could be afforded. Long story short, no pun intended, it's definitely the fault of the hedge funds, and retail investors as well as others definitely got screwed in bailing out those morons for their reckless betting, though there doesn't appear to be any evidence of shady dealings with the brokers. But it was indeed a tale of socialism for white-collar criminals, at the expense of the common folk. Seems to me that, for justice to be done, those hedge funds should be paying for damages, and everyone involved in allowing the stock to be shorted above 100% needs to see real punishment. Quick warning regarding a slew of articles going around with titles suggesting COVID may have come from a lab in China. These are nothing but irresponsible headlines. The articles are actually just reporting that the origins of the virus are being investigated, including whether it may have come from a lab. They contain zero evidence for lab origination. They are feeding conspiracy theories for views, a perfect example of the toxic media behavior that has led the world to the culture of insanity we are now trapped in. Notice that the articles always originate from shady networks, not more reputable sources, which have higher standards of truth and evidence. Clearly, the near overthrow of democracy and tens of thousands of avoidable deaths from COVID have not stopped sensational media from encouraging conspiracy theories. Finally, I'm happy to say that mayors for AGI are making an incredible push to sign 100 new mayors onto basic income in the next 100 days. But to do that, they're going to need our help. Follow the link below and check for petitions or events in your area. If they exist, join in. If they don't, start one. MGI is providing detailed, step-by-step guidance on their website for exactly how to go about recruiting your mayor to the cause. If most of the nation's cities are on board with basic income, it's going to be way harder for the federal Congress to refuse. This is the sort of action that this podcast exists to promote and facilitate, gang. We need each of you to step up and light the spark in your city. Send out the bat signal to others in your area and watch it grow into a UBI for everyone. Take that first step. You won't regret it. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Wish Andrew well. Give Biden your thoughts on standalone checks and universality. Bookmark and share the policy poll, Myanmar coup, Gamestop update, and 100 days of mayor's campaign. Get the ball rolling on basic income in your city. Flood Congress with calls, tweets, faxes, and letters using the Resist bot or Income Movement easy contacts below. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, or United Way, and don't forget to Yang Daily.